I probably better hit the...
We're live now. You're probably better hitting the... What's up, everybody? We are back. John Delarose here. Delarose.com. That's DELARROZ.com. Head over there now and sign up to get a free graphic novel from me, because you can read my free graphic novels. I believe my characterizations of my female characters are very much inspired by Terry Moore's work. So if you enjoy that, you'll probably enjoy Flying Sparks. Is that a good assessment? You've read both. I kind of have. I feel like I try to capture that vibe a little bit.
I think I would say Terry Moore's kind of like the spirit of Archie, but more like realistic, more personality, maybe. I don't know.
It's interesting. Yeah, there's a so Terry Moore's whole spiel is he's a cartoonist. He calls himself a cartoonist. He doesn't call himself like a what is it?
Comic book artist or something.
Artist or whatever. I guess, I mean, but cartoonist really has its own distinction in a certain style that veers towards simplistic character designs, I guess.
It's like the difference between a newspaper. They kind of think like a lot of the times a cartoonist is more newspaper or outside of the comic book industry.
Right. I guess that, but there's a style of drawing which cartooning, you can tell it's a cartoonist. You know, it's not a quote comic book artist. I'm just going to go through a random website where we can kind of show some of the art here. Like his face is like, if you look at the Reverend here, which we'll get into later because there's a little bit of spoiler involving that. His mouth is just a single line with like a little bit of an uptick, right?
Yeah.
And yet it forms his goofy facial expression perfectly with one line, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the chin is very like pronounced. It's angly. It's not drawn to be quote realistic, and yet in a lot of ways it looks like more of a real person than what I see from a lot of more quote detailed comic artists.
Well, it's that idea of like, what do symbols mean? And he kind of illustrates that in his work. You know, so like you said, a square jaw means like a male chin, or a line with a little tiny uptick means like a little smirk or whatever.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting how comic art flows like that, and I think really a large part of what is exciting to read about Terry Moore's art that's very different than, and we'll get into characters in the writing angle of this later, but is different from others is I see a lot of pro comic artists, and you're reading a book and it's like, well, you can tell that like Zatanna is Zatanna because she's got black hair, and you can tell that who's a blonde haired like Stephanie Brown is Stephanie Brown because she's got blonde hair, but they might look exactly the same. They might have the same facial features exactly because the comic artists in these Marvel and DC books so often just draw the exact same shapes over and over and over again, and try to trick you with just some minor details like that. Terry Moore's characters, as you can tell just from this portrait of pretty much all of the main characters in this book, are drawn very differently. Like, Jet has a rounder face than Rachel, and you'll be able to, even if you didn't have the hair color, you'd be able to tell the difference in just the faces right there. And I enjoy that about his work quite a bit.
Well, and he brings a lot of personality too with dialogue. Like everybody has their own personality.
He's very very careful about that, but that appears in the art also is the cool thing about it. So we're introduced to a smattering of characters, and overall, the first 12 issues, we were talking about this right before. I guess the first 12 issues where it starts, like you really don't even really know what's going on until about issue 9, issue 10, where he kind of starts to explain it.
Yeah, it's almost like a slice of life book, or like I mentioned, Archie, type of book. And you have these different storylines that are going on and different horror tropes, and they all kind of just come together, or like you said, around issue 10 or 12.
Yeah, it's disturbing because you're watching people die horrifically. a lot of these times, and yet it's slice of life, like you said. Like the characters just kind of go about their days anyway, and it's like I know when he wrote this, his intention was like, you know, he wanted to try something different than Strangers in Paradise, obviously, and his intention was because of the way that the horror genre has kind of gone to almost a very gory, very sensationalistic element to it now. He really wanted to bring back the creepy Alfred Hitchcock style stories, or actually the stuff you'd read in Creepy or Eerie back in the day, where it's like you get the feeling of something, but you don't necessarily like see every panel of like a slasher just stabbing somebody over and over and over again. And I appreciate that because I really do not like horror for the most part. I don't like to feel bad in general. And so the fact that he could still captivate me in a story with that slice of life, I think it adds a nice contrast to where this actually stands apart from other horror books that way.
And also with his writing, I've noticed he always has like a quote, and it will a lot of the times be like a big historical person, or a lot of the times even like a philosophy type of idea before, as well as like religious themes. In this one has huge religious themes in it.
Huge religious themes.
But I like that idea because you don't really need to know what that quote is, but it gives you something to go and look at, you know, to see what the meaning is or why it was said in real history, and then like compare it to the actual work. So it almost gives you like homework to add to reading the book.
Yeah, we should say, so every issue in this book starts with a quote. And we've got 12 issues to go over in this deal. So I guess we'll go with a brief synopsis. Basically, Rachel Rising is a story about a girl who died, and she comes back, and she doesn't know what happened. She reappears 3 days later. She's still got like the marks on her neck from where she was choked. Her eyes have turned like a crazy red, and she was buried alive and reappears basically, and is trying to figure out what's going on. So you immediately think, oh, this is going to be a murder mystery where she's finding a slasher killer, and that's what's going to go down. And it doesn't end up being that at all. So it reminds me a ton of Twin Peaks. Did you ever see Twin Peaks?
No.
Okay. Twin Peaks was a arty show in the 90s where it started off with just like this. It was who killed, it was Laura Palmer, is that her name? I can't remember. Yeah, it was Laura Palmer. All right. So it started off just like that. There was a murder in this backwater town where, it looked like the entire series was, and an investigator comes out and all that. And we actually get a detective who kind of starts paying attention to this stuff through Rachel Rising too. But the detective is the main character in Twin Peaks, whereas Rachel's the main character in this one. But Laura Palmer doesn't come back from the dead. That's the other part. But all these weird things start happening in the town, and you just start realizing how screwed up everybody is in Twin Peaks. So if you have the vibe of Twin Peaks and kind of go into it looking like, oh, this is going to be some weird town situation where we're really going to explore all the facets of the town and just see all this creepy stuff going on, that's kind of how the story progresses rather than the murder mystery you expect out of the first issue or two. Right?
Yes.
And I guess the first thing to talk about is the town itself. He names it Manson, which is an obvious visceral naming to try to get you thinking about Charles Manson, right? Cool. All right, so we'll delve into the first issue. The first issue is really interesting. What I should do is I should buy all these on digital so I can start pulling up screenshots a little better. Maybe I'll do that next week. I didn't do that this last week, so we'll just have to hold up my omnibus. The first page is the omnibus is very difficult to hold up because it's very big. The first page is really just set the scene, and we are staring at a gal who is just kind of walking through the woods, and you see, even in like the way he does his shading, he's see on the first. What's the first page? There's the first panel here. You've got it's just a forest, right? But
he's great at doing scenery.
He does amazing scenery, but you got a lot of shadows in the background, and that shadowing of the trees there adds a darkness to it. And there's a little tiny detail where there's a spider hanging, just to add the creepy element. And when you're reading this and you're just like looking through this dialogueless opening, you probably won't even sit and like stare at these panels for that long. You'll probably just roll through the story, right? But those little details in the feel are what sets the scene for this being a creepy deal. And it turns out the gal we see right there is not Rachel at all. It's somebody else we meet later. And the next pages then, so we just get a peaceful forest scene, and then suddenly she's coming out of the ground like a zombie. And awesome layouts here. The way this progresses, it's very cinematic and very this is something you would not get out of a old school comic, I'd say. But the way he does it compared to a lot of modern comics just really makes you feel what's happening over these.
Well, and the one thing I wanted to interject was it starts off with a Plato quote that says death is not the worst thing that can happen to you, and then it shows everything that you just shown.
Right.
And what you have to remember is Plato's a really like emotional type writer.
Right.
And so if you know that, he's setting the scene right there for you right there.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And that's where this goes. And obviously the name Rachel Rising is about her rising. Now, interesting, as I read through this, I almost think the name is the title is almost a misnomer for this story, because yes, Rachel rises to the occasion and she's also, literally coming back from the dead, but there's so many other characters in this, like it's really not all about her, and the title eviscerate gives you that feeling that it should just be about that one character, right? I don't know. It really progresses into different characters as this goes on. The first couple issues, it is definitely Rachel Rising. The first couple issues, and it really veers in a different direction. We see her getting her first breath after death. Look at just the way that the expression is in her eyes. She's just like panicked, afraid, has no idea what's going on. Oh my gosh. And that's again where I think Terry Moore's art excels above a lot of other people. Is I review a lot of comic books, and I see a lot of times a lot of artists, even professionals, just have gritty, angry face all the time. And that's like all they know how to draw. And you see it, and it's like you see the male superheroes like, "Argh!" And then you see
it's like the money shot.
It's right, but then you see the female characters going, "Argh!" And it's like that doesn't feel right. But Terry Moore does quite the opposite. He has different expressions between every panel that really communicate a sense of emotion, as we say. And through this first issue, Rachel shows up. She comes back. She visits a couple people and tries to find her friend Jet. Does she find her friend Jet? What are you?
No, I don't.
No, she's her friend Jet's a motor mechanic in a garage, and there's people working there, and she's trying to find her friend Jet, who we meet later. And that's interesting because the next book he does is Motor Girl, who's a motor mechanic. It's like almost like he planned that. And Rachel, at the end of this one, we're just left with a complete mystery. We have like 6 pages of zero dialogue up front. We see somebody come back from the dead. She's like, what is going on? It turns out she's been gone for 3 days. And she goes to meet this like sumo looking dude, Lewis, very large and in charge. And we're left with a strange comment at the end as his wife goes, "You're not Rachel." And that's it. that's the mystery we're left with. So we've got the mystery that's built on her death and resurrection, and then what and who is she now becomes pretty interesting at that point too.
Mm-hmm.
So that's as far as the first issue goes, I would say it feels a little written for trade at that point, which I'm not always the biggest fan of, but there is enough of a big hook here that I'm all in even through this first issue.
Yeah, I remember the first time I read it. This is like the second time I've read it, probably. I remember not really getting hooked until the like issue 10 to 12.
Oh, really?
When I was like all in. Here I was like, it's all right. It's like a lot of things that you read. A lot more details, like you explained. I don't think I picked up on those the first time because, like you said, there's no dialogue, so you push right through it, like you're reading a regular comic book.
Right.
Yeah. But when you slow down, you actually see a lot of those details, and it adds a lot more to it.
And when you know who the gal is on the first couple pages and how she's just looming over this scene, it also adds a lot to it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely a trade situation.
It's like I don't remember a lot of the stuff. I remember like the basic story of it, but it added a lot more reading it the second time.
Absolutely. And then we get into issue 2. So we start out with another quote: "From my rotting body, flowers shall I grow, and I am in them, and that is eternity." Edward Munch.
I don't know who Edward Munch is.
I don't either, and I'm going to Google him right now. So here we go. Edward Munch was a Norwegian painter from the late 1800s, early 1900s. And he made I guess his big piece was The Scream. So let's pull that up. Edward, The Scream. It's horror-ish. Munch, The Scream. Images? Okay, I'm familiar with this now that I've seen it.
Is it the regular Scream that or is that somebody else?
It is. Sorry, I'm pulling it up. Okay. So this is The Scream. Which,
that's what I thought.
This is a very famous painting, and now that I know, I've seen this many times.
I mean, we've all millions of times.
Yeah, so that makes sense in the context of a horror book to be putting that in there. "For my rotting body, flowers shall grow, and I am in them, and that is eternity." Interesting quote right there. And that is the theme of the second issue: is Rachel is taking her back life here. She shows up. We get to meet her Aunt Johnny, who is a super butchy lesbian, to the point where like it's one of those ones that you can't tell if it's a guy or a girl, so you don't want to say anything type of situations. And it just there's a couple references to it in the book, but it's not one of those like ones where it's like obviously just trying to put a character like that in there just to show how woke they are. This is an actual character, and I actually
like her as a character personally.
Yes, I agree. So Johnny is a really interesting character. Probably the most empathetic character well, maybe not, because the guy who likes Jet maybe is the most empathetic character, but Johnny's the most empathetic towards Rachel, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in this issue, Johnny is an undertaker who is or not an undertaker, a mortician. That's the word, right?
Yes.
And is all alone in the night in a mortuary, like sewing up dead bodies and all that. And Rachel walks in to go talk to her, and then we deal with all this creepy stuff. And there's a little scene in the middle of this where the old lady's body who's dead actually gets up and burps and then falls back down like it's a chicken with its head cut off.
Yeah, you get a huge amount of comedy. Well, the other one was kind of like demented and creepy. This one's like it could have been like just a slapstick type of like episode,
but with dead people. So it's a really interesting.
So it's like Addams Family, I guess.
Good point on that. really interesting contrast, to the whole horror theme and all that. And those moments of levity, there's really layers of this. There's the horror plot line. There's the moments of levity that are interspersed throughout all of this. And this again comes from his cartooning background, because of course you put the punchlines in there, right? And then the third is the interpersonal relationships, and the levity with the comedy and the interpersonal relationship elements are really what dials back the horror to the point where it's like, okay, I can read this and I'm not going to hate this. That's where it's like, those are what have me, right? He could really tell a story, any type of story with those two elements, and I'd be okay with it. It's a samurai story or science fiction or whatever. He layers that into there, and it doesn't matter what genre it is suddenly, at least to me. So Johnny thinks he's hallucinating Rachel at this point, and then we get to meet a very important character to the series named Zoe. And Zoe's this little girl, and we're getting back. And so after we have our levity moment in the mortuary here, we get a little girl who is a really demented serial killer.
Yeah.
And we get that other blonde gal showing up this time, and she's like basically pushing that gal to take action and really just set her off the rails. And that's what we find here as Rachel kind of explores things. This gets really demented. So we had the whole Johnny and Rachel scenes, which are very touching. And then we get in here, and Zoe's older sister comes back, and she's been a little slut in a car, and she's like, "What I do in my car is none of my business. Is in what's his name's car is none of your business. It's my life." Being all sassy teenager like. Mm-hmm. And then Zoe just slaughters her.
Well, and what's interesting is you were saying it's not like over the top gruesome. And when I was reading it, when I was in the moment, like it felt like over the top gruesome. But now looking back at it, there's nothing like really grotesque about it. It's just he's very good at showing actions that feel like it's like bigger than what's actually.
We'll show this scene right here, because this is actually exactly what you're talking about. And so Zoe is covering her sister's face to make it so she can't breathe, which is pretty grotesque. But look where the horror scene cuts out, and look at how he angles it afterwards. So you actually don't see her gasping for air exactly. It's like a movie where it's implied, right? Mm-hmm. And because of that, and then you just see her dead on the floor, right? So you don't see. You feel the struggle, but the way he layers it, it's not gruesome, and it's I still wouldn't let a kid read it, but it's a very good psychological way to handle the horror elements, I think. So yeah, that's issue 2. Issue 3, we get "It is extreme evil to depart from the company of the living before you die." Seneca. And I don't know who Seneca is either. Oh, it's a Stoic philosopher. Okay.
That's cool. What I figured.
There we go.
I don't know who that is, but I figured it was.
It was either that or a band named after him. You never know. And that's what comes up in this issue is we finally get to meet Jet, who is Zoe's best friend, and Jet's playing in a bar. And this is an issue, like, I really remember this issue, even having, like, I remembered reading this like before, and I was like, oh, I remember this part.
Yeah, this is a really rebellious rock and roll scene.
Yeah, it's definitely, you get a nice, Terry Moore's a musician also, and so am I. And so I like this. You get the keyboards, you get a very nice setting the stage for this issue. And Rachel goes to the bar. The other blonde lady's there, who's still a mystery at this point. And there's a couple people fornicating at the bar, and they realize that, and you just have this whole bar scene where we kind of get to know the characters, get to know Jet a little bit. Rachel starts following this other blonde girl because she's very curious about it, and we get a whole nother patch of just like no dialogue again, like several pages with very sparse dialogue, where Rachel's just kind of watching. This is a really beautiful building scenery right here.
Mm-hmm.
Very well done with the just the little pebbles up top and all that. And again, it seems like every issue happens at night. Just to make it a little darker. Or it happens with a lot of snow. There's a lot of snow all the way through this, and he has to draw all those little snow pebbles, which is pretty painful. That must have not been fun. And then the other woman throws the fornicating woman off the roof, and it hits Rachel, and both that woman and Rachel fall and crash to their doom. And we see them falling. We see a crash. Now, again, the crash is not done gruesomely. You can't see the figures in the crash.
It just looks gruesome because you have all those action lines.
But you do not see Rachel or what's happening there. So it's an implied psychological drama, and then you see them dead afterward.
Well, and they have a moment during this issue where Rachel isn't acting like herself and says all these really like weird and demented things to her. So it's creating this like, what's going on? Who is this person? Why is Rachel acting this way type of moment? And
that starts to build towards later, which is when we get our big reveal later in the issue. Now, when I read this the first time and not knowing about what it was, I thought that they were going to start trying to frame Rachel for murder, and she was going to get in trouble, and we were going to have to like have her go on the run and still try to find her serial killer, because we didn't know what was going on at this point. And I assumed the serial killer was the blonde gal at this point. So it's like, you don't know, right?
Yeah.
And so we get that, and we see the blonde gal kind of staring at the dude who was going to be fornicating with this gal, and he looks sad. And then it cuts to Zoe again, a little 12-year-old, and she burns down her house and kills her parents. So last issue killed her sister. This issue burned down her house, killed her parents, and shoved her sister's body. I don't know why she didn't just leave her sister's body to burn in the house, but that's maybe one thing that doesn't quite make sense. She shoved her sister's body into the trunk, and
that's a strong little girl.
That's a very strong little girl to be picking up.
That much.
Maybe that's showing the reveal later about what's going on with her, that it's not just her actions doing this, right? So that's the end of that. So we're left with more mystery. We don't really know who this little girl is, but we know she's just like absolutely demented. Rachel fell off the truck, and I think we're left thinking she's dead along with the others at this point. And that's a very bizarre way to end the issue. So it's like you almost have to just read the next issue right away, because it's like, what are you going to do? You want to read the next quote for us for issue 4?
It says, "Yea, thou, I walk through the valley of the shadow of death," by King David.
Yeah.
Who's that 90s rapper?
Yeah.
I forgot what his name was.
So yeah, the shadow of death quote probably was going to creep up in this, because it always does in situations. This is maybe a little cliche.
Coolio. Right. I remember now.
Oh yeah. Nice. nice reference. So we are with Jet at the hospital or mortuary or whatever it is. It's the mortuary, and Jet's there with Johnny. And we meet Earl here. So Earl is this very frumpy looking dude. He looks like you, Captain Cummings. No, I'm just kidding. Captain Cummings is jacked, so if you didn't know. But yeah, I just made the comment because he's bald. But and he becomes an important character in this, just as a like side relationship character, and he's the most empathetic character in the whole deal. Even though he's like a big, grumpy looking, frumpy guy, he cares, and all of his moments. You want to read his moments because you're just like, that guy is an actual wonderful man.
He's admirable. He's always trying to do the right thing.
and that's great. So they identify Rachel, and as they do so, Rachel pops up in a creepy manner. Hey, guys.
Which you knew was going to happen because, I mean, the book's named after her.
Yeah. And it's and their reactions are gasping faces. It looks like a cartoony, happy slapstick moment again, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then she burps and falls back down, but then wakes up again. So when they wake up, they have the discussion of what's going on.
What's interesting about this is, like, was it Johnny? She thinks that she's still like hallucinating at this point. Like Rachel's been dead this whole time and she's just hallucinating her spirit or something like that. Like, and it doesn't come, that the realization of what's coming on doesn't come till later.
Correct. Yeah. Johnny didn't, you're right. Johnny didn't acknowledge that Rachel was actually really alive until this point. So yeah, very cool. And then it switches scenes again, and we get our guy from the bar, and he sees his dead lover, and he just takes her out to the forest for some reason. This forest becomes like the main location for all the creepy things happening.
Yeah, it's almost like the Pet Cemetery thing.
Yeah, and we learned the backstory of this. I guess I'll go over this now. That 300 years prior, they lined up a bunch of witches on stakes here and burned them. And it was 100 women, so it was not a couple of witches. It was 100 of them, and all of them were innocent except for 4 witches, which we'll get to later. So, so this is like a spot where there just is death and evil and lurking, and this strange serpent, like, kind of encompasses this gal, goes into her body. She gets buried, and he freaks out and runs away. And our friend Zoe slams her car into his car because she doesn't know how to drive. She's 10. And she's like, "Can you help me?" And she gets the body out and just has it. And the dude just helps her carry the body into.
Yeah, this was really weird. Oh, he's gone.
There goes my internet connection. It's super creepy. And yet funny at the same time, because you're watching this like little girl like ask this like really destitute looking dude like to help her carry a body, and then they just kind of truck it off in these like very, very extreme distance panels.
Yeah, I thought this was really weird, and I think now, knowing what goes on later, like there must be some sort of manipulation from her to him. Like,
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's not clear here, but you kind of knowing what goes on later, you see that. All right, so they want to try to get Rachel into a hospital. She's like, no, and she's like, I need help. And then we go back to Zoe and the dude again. Look at this one panel first. This is a full just scenic panel again, and we talked about how great he is with his scenery. Look at the dark shading of all the trees. I mean, this is black and white. It's not, there's no color here. So all the shading and the shadowing is just completely, through his inking, and it's just absolutely beautiful.
You could almost get confused and think that's like a different chapter or a new issue.
Yeah. It's interesting how he does all the gutters in black rather than white to like add to the horror feel, I guess, also. And that's just another trick of the mind that like you probably don't notice. Okay. So we're burying them, and then she slaughters him. So this girl is just like awful. And this is actually a pretty gruesome panel. Like the slaughter of this guy is actually gruesome on screen.
Yeah, it's turned up.
Yeah. So we've dialed that up. She moves out of the forest, and we see the blonde gal just standing there in the forest with her hands in her pockets, just kind of watching. And she's always in these situations, aren't they? And then the Zoe kind of runs away from that gal, and that ends our issue here. So we're starting to see like, okay, there's a lot of setup now, and we're at a lot of setup at this point, right? So is that issue 4? Yeah. So we're totally, everything has just been total setup right now with no reveal. And I read these issue by issue at this point. I thought at the time that each issue was like, it still was enough where I'm like, I'm really intrigued. I need to know what happens, like, especially by this point. And did you read issue by issue or did you read via trade?
I read after I bought this book.
Oh, the omnibus. Okay.
Because I had heard how good it was, by like issue 20 or something like that. And you couldn't find the single issues.
Yeah.
So it was like, when I heard this was being published, I just, bought it.
Nice. All right. And we get a new quote for the next issue. In violence, we forget who we are. Mary McCarthy. Who is Mary McCarthy?
I don't know.
We'll start looking up all these quotes.
I should have done this beforehand.
She was an American novelist, critic, and political activist writing for The Group. I don't know who she is still. What books did she do? Her debut novelty, The Company She Keeps, received critical acclaim from New York intellectuals. Sounds like somebody I'd hate.
Probably. Yeah. 1912 to 1989. It's that era of...
Yeah.
Probably big in the Depression era, in the 50s.
Winner of prizes, blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. The Oasis, A Charmed Life, The Group. I don't know any of these words or these works, and I'm not going to go look them up because she seems like I wouldn't like her. All right. So we get this next issue, and we have a very like.
Here I found one quote real quick. It says,
"What's that?"
She left the Catholic Church and became an atheist, contrarian of fashion. Educate, blah 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 blah. Communism, wow. Soviet style communism.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's her. Whatever. So
of course she has a quote about violence too. I just want to point that out. Like, we forget who we are in the violence. So revolution.
Yeah. It's interesting. So I wonder, like, did Terry Moore just Google like quotes about death and violence, or did he actually like know all of this stuff? You always wonder that when you see stuff like this, right?
I mean, I think he does this in all his work, from what I've seen. So I think he does have like a broad education on just all kinds of people.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then probably, does Google and
and then searches them. Yeah, that's what I do. So I'm not gonna lie. So we start out and we get a little cartoony, silly scene again where it's a fly beating up against a window, and then it finally falls and dies. So it's creepy, and yet like we totally relate to this. I mean, when you see that fly buzzing against your window, it is the most annoying thing of life, and that's a very real moment right there. So we see Rachel waking up, and she's got like a goat head or something, like with horns.
It's like
a calf, a moloch, like it's definitely evokes like there's evil here above her head as she wakes up, and she kind of stares at it real quick, like, huh. And she realizes all this was not a dream, and she is because she sees her own eyes. Johnny shows up, and we have another nice character moment between the two. And then let's see.
This is a big character development issue.
Huge character development issue. So we've gone from like plot setup for 4 issues, right? Where it's like this plot little thing, and we're kind of meeting the characters, but now this is where like these are the moments where you really start to care about the characters, because you're like, they're people. They're not just like furthering the plot along. These are actual people who are just sitting here and making pasta, it looks like Johnny's doing, and just like you do in your house. So very interesting stuff, except for with a weird dead girl with razor blade marks on her neck, razor wire marks on her neck. So she goes out, and we see Jet being the best friend again. Jet's very nosy. Rachel, at this point, like Jet is more of a bubbly type of person. You can tell Rachel's more of a brooding type of person also, right? And Rachel doesn't want to, we evoke like their past and their friendship as they were growing up, like pinky swearing and things like that. Very cute stuff. And we go in, and Rachel doesn't want to tell Jet what's going on really, but she does. And then Johnny brings over some doctor who wants to meet her. And this doctor is a creepy, creepy old dude with just like a smile plastered all over his face. And his name's Dr. Seaman. And I can't not laugh at the word Dr. Seaman every time I see it. I'm sorry. I'm like 5.
I mean, my name's Captain Cummings.
Captain Cummings was reading Dr. Seaman. Sorry. Yeah, I am. I just can't. But he is a creepy dude that, like, I don't know if Terry Moore did that intentionally, but maybe he did. So there's that, and we get a weird reveal here after this. Like we got the cow scene at the beginning, and then the doctor says, "You're not Rachel, you're Mama Lal, the angel of death," and that's like, and then cut scene.
You're like, what does that mean?
What does that mean? So we've gotten 4 issues of "You're not Rachel, you're not Rachel," but now it's like, oh, she's the angel of death. That's and she's
my favorite Slayer song.
Yeah, she's like, what? And then we cut to Zoe again, and Zoe's a lot of fun here. And Zoe gets these social workers who show up,
and you get a lot of doughy-eyed shots of Zoe in this picture. She's totally murdered somebody, but now she's the victim.
Look at how cute and sad she is.
She'll murder you in a heartbeat.
And she won't say a word, so she's not talking to anybody at this juncture. And this continues through the rest of our reading time here. And she's going to get adopted. And when everybody leaves the room, the guy mentioned, implies that he's going to molest her or something like that. And she finally says something, and like it's 4 pages of her just looking sad and not talking, and then her face shifts to angry look. And like I said, Terry Moore's like deal is expression. He does expression very well, and so it just shifts, and she goes, "You're a bad man. You hurt children." And from that point forward, the guy's very hostile towards her, and now we see there's something totally different about her as this little girl throws the dude across an entire room and smashes him against the wall. She's clearly not just a little girl. And she runs into the elevator away from him. And this is the grossest death out of all of them, I think, so far.
Well, and the thing is you almost feel like relief out of it, because this person, it's heavily implied, and he like has actions to make it seem that way, that he is like a very bad person.
Yeah. So this is the sister, when she killed her, she seemed like a bitch, and she was, screwing around in some dude's car. So she was. But it's like,
did she deserve to die?
But did she deserve? Yeah, not really, right? And
this person apparently is very bad to children.
Right. And so this one, you watch this and you're like, oh, and since you've watched her kill several times at this point, you're like,
you're
get him, Zoe, kill the freaking child molester. I want him dead, And so he does, and she gets his head stuck in the elevator doors and then hits the buttons.
Ooh, which I don't think would ever happen. I mean, how many people have been killed by stuck in the doors? It's such a creepy way to die.
It's a great visual.
when I've gone into like buildings that have like really old elevators, I don't like them.
Yeah. I don't either. Well, I hate being, and then they rickety, it's like you sit there and you think you're going to die is what it is.
And it says Kirby Lane exit.
Nice.
She runs out the door.
Oh, Kirby. Oh, very nice. Nice tribute to Jack Kirby right there. So obviously. So yeah. I do stuff like that too. I just name things after people. It's fun. Okay. So that gets us 100 pages in. That's our 5th issue. We're halfway through and we're 44 minutes into this. This is going to be a long stream, but whatever. It's what it is. This is fun. I want to talk about freaking comics I like, and that's it. we could do an hour and a half stream about like somebody pretending to be doxxed or something like that. But, that's not what we do around here. We do different things. All right. So the next one, we shall rise like oaks and they shall fall like snow and we shall wear them like a human coat. Lilith. And this gets interesting. So, of course, there is the mythological figure of Lilith. Now, where's this quote from? I don't know enough about the mythological figure. I know what the mythological figure of Lilith is, but I feel like Terry Moore made up this quote because Lilith ends up being a character in the story, which is where this really starts to take an interesting turn, right? I could be wrong. He could have got this from somewhere. Are you looking it up?
Google it.
All right, Google it. While he's Googling that, I want to tell everybody, hey, guys, we have a campaign going on right now. It's called The Napalm Brothers, and it's a crazy, fun comic, and it's just got wacky stuff. It's got a freaking psychedelic tiger, which is enough for you to shit where you should back it. Cool-looking combat, lots of fun, and it's by 6 Scale Combat, who's in the chat right now. He goes, word up, fiends. I think he meant friends, or maybe fiends. Who knows? And it's live right now. I'm publishing this because I really enjoyed the first book, and I want to help the campaign out and help him out by helping him get his work out there. So I'm putting that link down in the chat, and I hope you guys check that out while Captain Cummings is looking this up. How'd that go?
Yeah, I don't think it's a real quote.
Not a real quote?
The closest thing that popped up was an Oscar Wilde poem, and it's not even like close to the same.
Okay, so this is Lilith, our character in the story. Very interesting. And we get a image on top of this of a crow looking down at a church. Interesting.
It'd be a nice bookmark.
It would be a nice bookmark. Yeah, I want some of the. I saw, like, as these were coming out, there was like original art of some of the covers up, and there's still some original art left, but there's not much. But I wanted one of the covers or something like that, and I just never pulled the trigger.
You gotta
never pulled the trigger. Yeah, they're a little expensive, but I regret not doing it now.
Actually, I think his artwork is actually really reasonably priced.
It is
for original artwork.
But I'm actually gonna go to it and take a little diversion. So you have the store on his website, and you go to original art sale. It's still got 40 pieces up. So we've got 5 Years, Strangers in Paradise, Echo, Motor Girl.
Motor Girl's actually really good too.
Motor Girl's really good. But again, I don't know. Rachel Rising was my fave. Original cover art. So what do we got here? Echo issue 12. This is a really nice cover. Wow.
So you need like $1,500.
Yeah, $1,500. 5 Years, number 2.
I haven't read that.
Rachel Rising.
I got the book, but I haven't read it yet.
Unfortunately, like, this is not the cover I would have wanted. So I
character. Is that Bottled Heads?
Yeah, it is. So that's I can't see myself putting that up on my wall. Maybe this one. This is very, very cute and, not creepy. So I enjoy that. But I don't know. So there were a bunch of covers, like obviously the ones that are the pretty girls and all that go pretty quick, That's what everybody wants. And he's still got 6 pages left. Now, of the pages, they're not all that expensive. What do we got? Issue 13? Issue 2. Oh, and this is one of the Johnny character moments.
There, she wakes back up.
Yeah, very neat. Cool. I don't know. So that's my diversion right now. Maybe I'll pick one of these up just because I like it. Maybe I'll get one of the snow ones. Now, what's interesting about Terry Moore also, he hand letters all of his stuff. So this is not a computer program lettering. Like, the original art has letters on it because he hand letters these deals. Pretty neat. That's not usual in the industry at this point. So
yeah, because it's all speed driven. So
yeah, very cool. I like that. It's just another nice touch that is artistry and craftsmanship. Cool. Let's see. So we've got Rachel talking to her friends again, trying to figure out what's going on. The creepy old man waves as they go. And he's such a creeper. And he becomes even more creepy as this goes on. Now, this is where it like becomes the town and everybody in it's really the central of this, not just necessarily Rachel, because all these people have their own little plots and their own little creepy elements to them at this point. And they just all escalate together.
And you're basically wondering, with all this mess, what is this book about?
Right. By this point, you're like, please tell us what's going on. I think this is issue 6, right? And we see the gal who got thrown off the building at this point, walking along the forest, and she gets picked up by a like trucker guy or something, and he's like Ortiz Carpets. So I don't know who Ortiz is. It's probably a reference to something, or maybe one of his friends. You never know. And she has the snake pop out of her mouth, and it kills him. And then she re-swallows the snake and goes on her merry way.
And while this guy seemed kind of creepy,
he didn't do anything wrong.
He was trying to like help her, and not take advantage of her or anything like that.
Yeah, it was definitely a kill an innocent. It's very different from the Zoe scene where she's killing people who are sinners for sure. This is killing an innocent, and this is clearly a bad person. You can tell kind of by the way that like her clothes are all, I'd say, darker. I mean, this is a little psychological trick used also.
Yeah, the old Star Wars trick.
The old Star Wars trick, yeah. So it's a very nicely done right there. And then our plucky band of adventurers of Johnny and Rachel and Jet start to investigate what's going on here. And at this point, they actually meet Zoe, the little girl, in an alleyway. And she's out there by herself, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, this poor little girl by herself. And Rachel's like, hey, there's another woman here. And nobody else can see her except for Rachel and Zoe. So Rachel goes after her and starts to ask her questions. And this is where we start to get reveals finally. And this gal's like, you don't remember, do you? And you're like, ooh, remember what? And Rachel tells her to wait in the car, and then Lilith makes the quote, and they shall fall like snow, which comes from the beginning of this chapter. And then snow actually starts to fall. And when she says that, it's very clear that she means people are going to die falling like snow. And very, very creepy. And it switches again back to the creepy old man. He goes home. What a jolly old man. And he starts talking to his wife. And, oh, wow, what a nice day I had with this Rachel, my dear Sylvie. And then he turns on the light, and Sylvie is just a corpse who's just sitting there like, blah. And you're like, what the hell? So Rachel gets back in the car.
Creepy every single time you see that sort of.
Super creepy. And, oh, man, so creepy. Every issue hits a weird, creepy thing where it's just like, ooh, that's uncomfortable at some point. And then we get a very interesting plot development as everybody goes into the car. We get the crow from the beginning of the issue, an actual scene of this, and the crow takes off and flies. As you hear as you get crashing sound effects down below, it's obvious that they crashed their car, but you don't see it. Again, you're just imagining it. Very interesting. And Rachel wakes up, flung from the car, alive, and Jet is basically dying. Johnny can't feel her legs. Total train wreck, and Jet dies, and that's the end of the issue. So,
which you would personally, I like character deaths should be done like sparingly, and there's so much death in here that I feel like if we find out in a moment that nobody dies,
right?
but like if somebody would have died, it's almost like it wouldn't have meant as much because you see so many people die in the book that personally I don't think that at that point like it would have just been like sort of here's where a character's got to die sort of moment.
And it's the end of the first trade. Yeah, it just seems it's definitely like a spot where that happens. Unfortunately, since I read this before, this had like zero emotional impact on me because I already know what happened, right? And so issue 7 starts, with. Oh no, it keeps going. Sorry, we get a weird page where we zoom in on Jet before the end of the issue here, and it's like almost like a Charles Schultz like circle moment. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, he wants you to focus in right.
He wants you to focus right on her. And
because then you go to the next page.
I'm sorry, I thought that was.
I noticed that the first time.
Yeah,
I read this earlier today. I don't think I noticed that because on the last panel, her eyes open up.
Her eyes open, so she did not. So he didn't even like leave that moment like for the next trade. He wanted you to know she's coming back to life at that point. So that's good.
Like, okay, well, I have to know why she's alive.
Yeah, and that makes more sense. Okay, so that's trade number 1. At this point, I think with the reveal of Lilith saying you don't remember what's going on, this is going to be interesting this time with the death and resurrection of Jet. It become I think if you're not hooked by this point, yes, like once you get into issue 10, 11, 12, it just changes the game. Mm-hmm. But I think if you're not hooked at this point, you're not going to be hooked. Like you're not going to care what's coming next if you don't at this point, right?
Well, because you have so many different side stories, and you know they're going to come together. It's just how is it going to happen,
and when is it going to happen?
Yeah.
So very neat. And then we get into 7. Death is not a game that will soon be over. Death is a gap you can't see, and when the wind blows through it, it makes not a sound. Tom Stoppard. So are we looking up Tom Stoppard?
Yeah, sure.
Tom Stoppard, a Czech-born playwright. Wow.
83 years old. Czech-born British playwright, screenwriter. He's done everything. Radio, stage.
Wow. So he's in. He wrote Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. This guy's legit. Okay. There you go.
Shakespeare in Love. All kinds of stuff.
Oh, Shakespeare in Love was a great film. Okay. So wow, he's probably one of the better playwrights of our time then.
This is crazy. Born in Czechoslovakia, Stoppard fled as a child refugee from the Nazi occupation.
Wow.
So there you go.
And then wrote a bunch of cool plays. There you go. What a guy. Okay. So this issue, we see, I guess, Rachel walking around. Remember the snow, sister. Some random woman then says, and they will fall like snow. How am I doing so far? And super creepy moment again. But it's as Rachel like comes to realization, like the whole world's out to get her. Death. She's talking about death. People dying, falling like blank. And then we meet our investigator who's coming in, and he's like a detective who's like, what's going on? I'm part of the PG.
Howie Mandel.
Yeah. He does. Weird spot. He just asks questions. He doesn't really like accuse anybody of anything and just kind of walks out. So it's very
open and closed type thing.
The very slice of lifey type of scene again, right? Of like, oh, this is what happens. And then we get into this is probably the most emotional scene out of this entire 12 issues coming up. And it's Earl, the big fat guy, and he's opening up the casket of Jet and her body bag. You see she's naked. Oh my gosh, naked girl. And he just is sitting there. Look at your beautiful body torn in two. He locks the door. And you think he's going to do something creepy because he looks creepy and he seems like he's a creeper. He has not really had much character moment so far. So you think he's going to do something creepy here. And he keeps her breasts covered with the body bag, incidentally. And then he takes her hand and he says, Jet, I'm sorry I never had the courage to talk to you before. I can't let you go to your grave without telling you something. I love you. And I sort of have this dream that someday you and I know I'm not an attractive man, Jet, and the darkness of the inks goes away at this point, and it's just zooming in closer and closer on this guy in a very sparse lines, no background. You're totally focused on him, and it changes your perspective of him immediately. I would not have devoted my life to make you happy and safe This world is a terrible place. You were the best thing in it, and look what it did to you. And then a spotlight of him holding onto her. And he continues on like this. He tries to set her neck right, and then Jet wakes up. Yeah. And now Jet has the dead people talking has a different dialogue box shade to it, which is interesting. And she flips out about being naked in a body bag, and she's like, "Go get Rachel. She'll know what to do." And so he actually seals her back up in the body bag to conceal her, which is interesting. And Johnny wakes up in the hospital. We get more character moments at this point, just a slow roll again. We got the big reveal last issue. We got a car wreck, all that, and now we're back to slow roll, right? Because Terry Moore really loves to do this. And I think even though there's a lot of slow-paced moments in this, the slow pace in between the frantic like this actually makes the frantic moments more frantic in a way.
It's like fishing, when you're bringing in a little catfish, you pull them in and then you let them go a little bit.
Yeah.
So it makes all that mean more.
It just gives you this like roller coastery.
Yeah.
Right? So Johnny and Rachel have a moment, and Johnny kind of admits she's a lesbian at this point, which we all knew anyway. And Rachel does actually comment on that. She's like, "I'm 28. You don't, it's like you don't have to explain this to me." Pretty funny. And then we switch to Zoe in a graveyard again. And this is really crazy. The graveyard, all the graves start to explode, and all the bodies pop out in the graveyard into the form of a pentagram. And Zoe runs away. And you get a really, really cartoony moment with Zoe. You see her like face right here, where she's definitely got it's cartoon, and it exemplifies her innocence as a little girl, even though we've seen quite the opposite. And then the issue ends again.
That was a quick issue.
That was a quick, which it isn't though, because there's so much dialogue moments going on. It's actually one of the slower paced issues, but to explain it, it's really fast, right?
Yeah.
And then we get "Fear not death, for sooner we die, the longer we shall be immortal," Benjamin Franklin. That's going to be a good quote, because now we're going to learn quite a bit about this. Opens up with creepy Dr. Seaman and his Dr. Seaman and his dead wife. And he meets Rachel at the door, and doesn't show her the dead wife. We see our evil blonde gal, who we've now learned is something different, and she's got wolves who are pulling out the body of the dead dude who Zoe killed in the forest. Lots of snow scenes in this. So look at all the snowflakes. Imagine how long it took him to draw these snowflakes. He must have hated his life. So just going terrible.
Oh, he froze again. Yeah, anyways, after that, you go from the snowflake scenes with the wolf and the man, and it moves right back into a scene that's like the slice of life with Jet and Rachel and the creepy old guy and Earl.
Yeah,
trying to fix her neck because her neck's broken and she can't move.
Very nice. Yep, and nice character moments again. And she tells the doctor at the end of it, "I'm sorry I called you a perv," which is pretty funny, as Dr. Seaman with his dead wife is definitely a perv. There's something wrong with him. So
yeah, he's weird.
Very funny. So we meet. Who do we meet at this point?
Oh, this is that snake woman's like coworker. That's
yeah. And then she pulls him in, drags him in, and viciously murders him. So
yeah, she looks very seductive at the door.
Yeah,
he's just like concerned, like, what's wrong with you?
And again, it just shows the contrast that she she's after and just killing innocents, does not care. Like Zoe, while she's killing, is definitely killing bad people. It's very different. And then we get back to just a very slice of life scene where Rachel is washing Jet's hair, and that's it. So, and now we get an interesting development with Earl and Jet. So before we got the confession in the last one, and we saw that he is just a very tender, wonderful human being. In this one, Jet says, "Hey, can you hold my hand again? Because you're the only person I can actually feel." So he's really laying in thick the romance plot on this at this point. And the dude just sits there and holds her hand like a gallant man, and just absolutely, this shit makes me want to cry. It's so pretty.
The internet would call him a simp, though.
The internet would call him a simp. They would. But you know what?
What's bad is the internet's affected me so much that's what I thought when.
Isn't that terrible?
The internet would call this guy a simp, even though he's just being there for this woman.
Just a wonderful guy. That's all. And then it ends with 2 pages of showing going up a tree, and then Zoe's up the tree, and there's a dead body at the bottom. So that's the end of that issue. We're getting towards the end here. That was issue.
What's this? Who's this next quote? Who's this person?
Shakespeare.
I don't even know what play that's from, though.
The hell is empty, and all the devils are here. Let's look that up. What play is that from?
Well, that's trying to say it's an album, but obviously they stole it from Shakespeare.
Yeah. Who do we got?
Quote from Shakespeare. Tell me what the play is. Jeez. The Tempest. Oh, I've seen
Tempest.
That thing is weird. Oh, and it's about witches, so it makes
it does have witches, so it's this is it's very well done on the thematic there, Terry Moore. So Rachel drives Johnny's car. We get back and we see the fat sumo Lewis dude again, who is in the snow, sitting in the snow with no shirt on, with his tubby self. Very bizarre. And he's kind of a useless character compared to the other. And he's kind of like, you might be cursed or something. Go away. And that was that. And then we see Lilith. She hasn't called herself Lilith yet, has she? Sorry. Oh, well.
Yeah, this character here, though, the big guy, he's kind of used as like the unbiased character. What's going on.
Yeah. There's not much else to him at this point. There might be later. I don't remember. Yeah. But I mean, over the first 12 issues, he's my least favorite character.
I mean, he's just there.
He's just there, right? And let's see. So we get into Lilith again, or the blonde gal who's causing all the trouble. Big snow scene again. We've got snow scenes for 4, 5, 6 straight pages. I mean, wow, that's a lot of snow he's drawing. And she's got behind her a trail of dead cattle. So just super scary and creepy. And she shows up,
which is signifying like famine and
yeah. So she's obviously bad news, right? And she shows up to Zoe's, and this is where we start to get reveals. So now we're finding out what's going on. They have a big argument, character-wise, and Lilith is like, "You need to come out of this girl," and you're like, "Wait, what's going on here?" And now we get a really interesting action scene where she like gets wrapped up in tree bark, which is like these things like a very old tree, and it just like pops out of the ground and like and starts to choke her. And Lilith changes her outfit to be more of a corset from olden times. Looking super hot here for the bad girl. There she is, and. She shows up and she calls Zoe Malice and tells him to come out. And guess what? The Zoe, the little girl who's like stronger and killing people and all that, is possessed by a demon. So we start to realize, oh, there is real supernatural weird stuff going on here. And he's a very creepy demon. He's got the horns, very well drawn. She's got him tied up with this this tree bark stuff. And
but you then start to feel really like empathetic for the little girl because she's possessed by a demon.
Right.
And you really think that she's going to die from this. I mean,
you do. You're at this point going, oh, this is bad news. And the thing is, Lilith isn't scared of the demon. She's actually taunting the demon. She seems worse than the demon, like in the dialogue here. And so it really does a great job of setting up the enemy bad guy as somebody who's worse than a freaking demon, right? You don't get that bad usually. And the demon is trying to lay waste to this town a little bit, but he's doing it over generations as a slow roll. And Lilith's like, I want to kill everybody now. And that's it. And so Malice, the demon, says that he's got somebody carrying his seed, and that's basically going to be the Antichrist, I guess, or something close to that. And Lilith wants to know who it is. And what happened is actually to stop Malice from coming out anymore, Zoe stabbed herself. So, and you see this, like, you don't see it, you just see blood dripping and a knife on the ground. And Lilith kind of freaks out about this and actually carries her to the hospital to try to save her.
It's kind of weird because you would think that would be the end of the issue, but it's not.
It's not. You'd think this is a very nice moment to stop the story because you're like, this is quite the deal. And we get a page of slice of life after this, where Jet's just kind of sitting there. She's kind of patched up, and she goes, "Oh yeah, I'm starving. I'd kill for a peanut butter sandwich."
Oh, I figured out who Dr. Seaman is. He's actually Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Bill Nye the Science. Oh, he does. He's got the bow tie.
I used to really like Bill Nye, but that's gone. It's all over. Nostalgia.
It's all over. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways.
So that's that issue. We got 3 issues left, so we're getting there. And Gershom Scholem is the next quote. So you can look that up while I read this, I guess.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Okay, I don't either. Lilith wanders about at night, vexing the sons of men and causing them to defile themselves. So
German-Israeli philosopher.
Really?
Born German-Israeli philosopher. What years? Born 1897, died 1982, and born in Berlin and died in Jerusalem.
Huh. There you go.
What kind of philosopher, though? That's what.
Yeah, what kind of philosopher? It's interesting how he's talking about Lilith, like as like a sort of Jezebel type. Interesting.
He was the first professor of Jewish mysticism at Hebrew University of Jerusalem.
So he's a Kabbalah type of guy. All right. Huh. Okay.
So he's a Jewish scholar, basically.
That makes sense that he's making Lilith mythology quotes at that point then, right? So
yeah.
All right. So we have Johnny in the hospital at this point, and all of our friends kind of show up, and we're all just kind of hanging at the hospital being friendly with Johnny. And Jet shows up. She's got the same weird red eyes now as Rachel, and Johnny finally sees it. And we get a weird hospital scene in this entire issue at this point. So they start looking for Zoe because they saw her there. And they go after her. She's kind of like dead looking almost. Or almost. But she's at least passed out. And Rachel uses like some weird power to like touch her face. And she obviously sees that Zoe's possessed because she freaks out and goes, "God in heaven, oh my gosh." And,
I thought it was like, was that burning her hand, or was that some sort of...
burning her hand. Oh, it must be burning her hand. Yeah, it's something, I don't know.
It's either like weird mysticism or like just burning your hand demon thing or something.
Yeah, or both. and then Jet tries to do it and nothing happens. So and then they question that. And Jet kind of gets so Rachel leaves to go find the blonde lady. And then Jet's dialogue changes to all black, the balloon. So you know something evil is inside Jet.
Well, you kind of get some foreshadowing earlier because the demon says, or they say that the demon lives inside children or people that are crippled.
Right. Yes. And so there's that. So let's see. Rachel goes out into the snow. Rachel sees like open grave in the snow, and there's like this mutilated looking lady.
Yes.
And then Rachel has a like long. This is the exposition point. In the snow, the two ladies talk about Lilith and how she was Lilith and forever, and about the 300 years ago, the witches were burned in this very spot, and we were all here. And it turns out there were 4 witches: Rachel, Lilith, Hannah, and I think Mary Scott was the other one. And I guess 100 women, the 4 witches protected them. I guess the witches were good witches, whatever that means. At least, probably not. But from Lilith's perspective, Lilith's lying about everything. You got to keep in mind. She kind of just gives the backstory there, and then she's like, I'm just going to just like torch this entire town and kill everybody. And Rachel's like, oh, that's not good.
You can't do that. And you've seen this thing where basically you tried to stop me last time type deal.
Yeah, definitely. So good stuff. And we have 2 issues left now. So we get Let My Enemies Devour Each Other.
And you got a Tim Lim rabbit right there.
We got some Tim Lim rabbits. So that's I actually took a picture of this image and sent it to Tim Lim, and I said, cannibal bunnies, oh no. That's a scene from the next page where it opens up. There's a blizzard, and rabbits are feasting on like wolf flesh. So it is very creepy again. And Lilith further explains things. Now we get that Lilith's unreliable and kind of lying because she goes, oh, all the witches were burned. And then she goes, oh, the witches were drowned. And then Rachel's like, wait a minute. You just said they were burned, but then you said they were drowned. And then there's a couple other inconsistencies in her story.
Yeah, where you're basically getting the dishonest
right. And then Rachel's the real narrator, so she's calling her on it, which is kind of nice. And so that's much more exposition. It's just 2 girls talking in the snow for like 6-8 pages. And Terry Moore's girl, you can just look at Terry Moore's girls. He draws all day long. It's fine. And then Lilith kind of wraps Rachel up in some blanket and tries to kill her, silence her, all that. And then it cuts scene again. So we got the tension of what's going to happen there. Perfect. Let's see.
Then it goes back to Zoe.
Back to Zoe. And Jet's kind of looming in the background. The child care worker shows up, and Jet scares the crap out of her. And then Jet brutally kind of kills her. And we know at this point, you know it's not Jet because Jet never acted like this before, right?
Yeah.
So she calls the nurse on that front. We go to the detective, and the detective's got like some board with all these like tons of like things. It looks like the Charlie conspiracy board from Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where he's got like 50,000 things and he's got a map and all that. And he actually goes and he pinpoints the location of the murders on the map, and it forms a pentagram, of course.
Of course.
Of course. You know, that's kind of cliche, but I like, honestly, there's a few cliches in this that happen, and I like it, to be honest. I have no problem with cliches, personally.
I mean, if everything's good,
yeah,
then who cares about the cliches because they make it fun.
And then it cuts again, and everything's dark. It's like a reverse snow scene, it looks like. But it turns out it's that Rachel's buried underground with a bunch of bones. And so very, very creepy way to end the issue. And that is issue 11. So we're getting some good reveals at this point. We know Lilith is like a witch. Rachel maybe was a witch, and maybe Jet was a witch, and maybe Zoe even was a witch. We don't know. There's probably more going on. Obviously, Lilith invokes that something longer is going on that's even more evil than just a simple witch. And we have a demon now, Malice, who's actually trying to be the Antichrist and bring about the end of the world. So this is a very, very spiritual, dark story at this point that is not now we know, oh, this is not just a like who killed her, we're going to find that out type of story. So very good. And we got our final quote. You never realize death until you realize love. Catherine Butler Hathaway.
It's a woman that basically had tuberculosis in the 1890s. It was apparently when she was born. And her book was published, the memoirs was published by some sort of feminist publisher. But I'm trying to skim to see what she's all about, basically. She goes on to write in the 1920s. I don't know. I think she's just sort of a writer.
Yeah, that's a nice quote. Because if you think about it, realizing love means that you would lose something. So and death is the ultimate loss. So makes sense. Okay. So back in the hospital. All right. And we see that the woman that Jet kind of killed is getting rushed off. And Jet's hiding things. We're still in like the black dialogue balloon. So it's obviously not just Jet. It's something evil. Zoe wakes up, and Jet starts questioning Zoe, and then Jet really flips out, and we learn that Malice the Demon has inhabited Jet, and starts to like really grill Zoe at this point.
Yeah, it gets really weird because he's going to impregnate her, and she's going to birth the Antichrist and all this stuff.
Very creepy, very creepy.
And she basically like laughs at him.
She does. It is. Zoe's a pretty cool character. So Jet leaves and then punches a preacher and knocks him out, and then electrocutes herself. And then Malice jumps out of the electrocuted Jet and into this preacher dude who walks out smiling.
Which I guess must mean that he's either again, Lilith was lying earlier in the series, or he's becoming very ballsy, because why is if he supposedly goes into people that are disabled or children, he's now going into a priest who's a grown man.
Yeah, very, very weird turn of events here. We learn Johnny's asking where all the girls are, and Earl's like, I don't know, I lost them. And then Jet is electrocuted, and Earl starts to kind of work on her. He just holds her hand again, and she's laying on like the mortuary table. And then Rachel pops from the ground with the hand rising out from the ground like a zombie again. And Rachel just goes, big mistake, Lilith. Now I know. Now I know. So Lilith was taunting Rachel this whole time about like how she didn't even remember anything, and how Lilith's going to really have free reign this time. Like this has all happened before, which tends to make me think this is not just about witches 300 years ago. It's goes a lot further than that. And Rachel at the end of the second volume now like has her memory, I guess, or some of it, and is basically vowing to fight the evil.
Yeah. Well, and you knew that because I mean earlier in the series she says, I'm Lilith, the first woman, which I guess could mean first woman of the covenant that they hold or something, but it's I mean obviously the name and all that, you know, like it's pretty obvious.
Now, so all these come with these black editions come with like a little bookplate. Did you actually take your sticker off and put it in? No, you didn't. So you kept it pure like mine. All right.
Yeah, I got number 410.
I have 372. So this is the black edition. This is a limited edition of 750. They're almost impossible to find, and they go for like $200-300. So I wouldn't even bother. There is a hardcover edition, which is also sold out,
I believe.
The hardcover is really hard to find. Also, it doesn't go for $250, but it's still expensive and hard to find. The soft covers are easy to find. You can buy it on his website or Amazon or whatever. So the black, I like the black. It basically takes the first issue cover and just kind of embosses it. It's like
you get flat and then glossy.
Flat and glossy. pretty neat way of doing things, very different. And then the side is the same, and then the back has like a couple birds or crows or whatever flying in the same manner. So neat stuff. What I do like about it is it does. I love when you got the little string. It makes me happy.
But it's always.
I'm gonna autistically bitch about this right now though. So as you see, you open this up. Most of these big thick omnibuses have sewn binding, and so you get this like. Let me find one. Hold on. So here is The Mighty Thor by Walt Simonsen, for example. You open it up. You see how the sewing pops off from the back, and you get this little eye in there. Yeah. And
you get a better margin.
You do. You get a better inside, like especially in the middle pages.
When you get cool splash pages.
It doesn't matter so much because Terry Moore doesn't really do splash pages. He does traditional art on this, but it does make it a little harder to stay open. And what happens is, like with big thick books often, and it hasn't happened with this, but pages will start to come out when it's just glued binding like this. So I don't recommend using glued binding for giant freaking omnibuses like this, and that bothers me. But I guess that's my nitpick. Why are you not on the screen? Sorry. So that's that. So that's the first 12 issues, and very solid start. And at this point, in it, I was like, dang it, I have to stop reading here so I don't think about other things from the future, because we're going to do another stream for those next 12 issues or whatever. And I don't want to like spoil my impression of it when I'm talking about these 12 issues. Right. But I didn't want to stop. Like at this point, I'm like, I want to finish. I want to plow through this and finish this at this point, you know?
And you could probably read this all in one day very easily.
Yeah. The way he paces things, again, like there's a lot of pages with like no dialogue on it. So it's like boom, 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 boom. And the pages that have dialogue, they're very quippy dialogue. So it's not like, it doesn't really slow down. It's not like a Jonathan Hickman thing where you're just like, oh man, it's like a balloon of text this big, right?
And he's trying to be very philosophical,
right?
But it just comes off as like pretentious,
right? Yeah, that doesn't happen here. So that's that. Again, this is just, to me, this is the perfect comic. Like I love it so much. I just can't. Mm-hmm. I can't get enough of it.
And he's so good at, like I said earlier, he's very philosophical. A lot of the time he works with like very religious themes, which means they're very basic, they're very standard, and good. And he brings everything and makes it like a huge story. Like that's the way I just read Echo like a few months ago. And that one's not as good as this one. I didn't like that one as much as this one. But like Motor Girl's very good. I haven't read.
They're all very good. Yet. I haven't read 5 Years yet either. So I haven't actually finished reading Strangers in Paradise yet. That's why I haven't read 5 Years yet.
I haven't read Strangers in Paradise either.
So
the Strangers in Paradise is 5 years associated with Strangers in Paradise.
So it goes. So Strangers in Paradise is a giant 2 omnibus set. So you get 2 of them this big, right?
Yeah.
I've read the first one, and what happened was he did that, and then it was like 105 issues total. So he got really burnt out on it. She's like, he took a year off. I stalked Terry Moore. So he took a year off and then went to Echo. And I found Terry Moore because like the Echo trade paperbacks were coming out. I saw the cover of it and I'm like, wow, that's a pretty girl. I'm going to check that out. So I bought the first Echo trade paperback, and that's how I discovered him. Echo happened, then he did that for a bit, then did Rachel Rising because he wanted to try this. And then once this kind of wraps up, it's not done, it's kind of half wrapped up. We'll get to that later. But it's he got burnt out on this basically because it's really dark, and you know, if you ever watch the man talk, or he's a very gentle, nice guy. Yeah. So you know, all this gruesome stuff is very out of character for him. And it probably took a toll on him, I'm guessing. And then he switched back to Strangers in Paradise 25th anniversary. So there's a 25th anniversary hardcover of that, which then did that. And then 5 years apparently is 5 years after, like you said, whatever. Except it has all the characters. So the Rachel characters show up. Oh, Motor Girl. We forgot Motor Girl. Did Motor Girl after this, then did Strangers in Paradise 25. Motor Girls, about like basically an Iraq war veteran with PTSD. It's a very nice story also.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll do a thing on that at some point too, because I really like. I'd like to read that one again too, and it's short. Strangers in Paradise 25th, and then 5 years puts all like Motor Girls in it. Rachel and all them are in it. Echo's in it, and Strangers in Paradise. It's like their extreme crossover event, Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Well, that sounds good.
Yeah.
So I'll read that, and then I'll have to go back and read everything, and then read 5 years again, so that I get all the references.
Right. Yeah. So what he said is that 5 years is meant to be its own story. He's very good about that because he's a classic cartoonist. So he's very good about you being able to pick up something and just read it. But again, it's just probably better if you have all the references. So yeah. So that's that. And then Ever is coming out. I shouldn't even talk about this. And the reason I don't want to talk about this, I'm gonna pull up my email. Abstract. The reason I shouldn't talk about this is so next week he's coming out with a limited edition hardcover called Ever, and this is a new just full graphic novel, and that's it. And the hardcover is the limited edition, which means there's not going to be many of it, and there's a regular softcover edition coming out too. But this is going to be the hardcover, and you can only pre-order it from his website. And we just got the email.
These things go like you got to order them that day.
Yeah, the reason I don't even want to talk about it is I don't want more people competing with me to get this. So if I don't get this, I'm going to be like raging mad. So
like to get the I got it right here. It's in my reading pile. But to get this hardcover, like I think you told me about it, and I waited, got home, and I barely was able to order.
Oh yeah,
I ordered it at work. And then got home and looked at it again, and it was already sold out.
Yeah, so they go quick, and so I definitely recommend getting this. I don't know if you're like me and you're collecting all the hardcovers and stuff. Like I'm doing it.
Well, because I think this was like $40 or $30 or something.
Yeah, $27.99 this one.
And it comes with a nice print, and it's same thing I got this time. 351 out of 600, so it's very limited, little collector's thing that you're spending. Like you could probably get this in trade for $15 or something on in-stock trades.
Yeah.
But, it's for if you want that little extra.
Yeah. And I don't know. So the only non-hardcover, I don't have the Echo hardcover.
Yeah. I got the soft cover one.
I'm really upset by that because like, I can't find one anywhere. There's none on eBay. I can't find one. So it's upsetting. But Ever is going to be a thing. I don't even know what it's about.
No.
Terry's graphic novel. I mean, that's all he needs to say is Terry's new graphic novel, and I'm buying it. I don't care what it is. So
it looks like it's going to be some sort of another horror type thing or drama.
Definitely a drama of some sort. Let's go Terry Moore, Ever. Maybe there's an article about it. Reveals his new graphic novel. Let's see. He did it on his studio. Something Ever is a dark fantasy series with not just the title, but it's also the main character's name. Okay. Which he revealed in How to Draw Noses. It's pretty funny.
How to Draw Noses.
That's pretty funny. A dark fantasy graphic novel. How to Draw Noses. Oh man. Okay, so that was a lot of fun. And yeah, we're gonna do this for the whole volume. So definitely pick up whatever you can get. I definitely recommend the omnibus just because it's easier. And follow.
You can probably get it on Comixology and all that stuff too. Or
yeah, you can.
So if you wanted to like read it now with us or whatever.
Yeah, it makes it easier that way. And I think that's it. My thoughts are, I love this as much as I did the first time.
It's something that I would read like every Halloween.
Yeah. Terry Moore, it feels like the first time you touched me. Okay. Okay, so next time I'm going to start off with when I met Terry Moore and how that experience went and what went down. So that's what I'm going to do to open the next stream. So it'll be very fun. And I think that's it. Have you met him before?
No.
Oh well, you've met lots of cool people though. So
yeah, B. Claymore.
Well, that's about the most awkward way we could possibly end the stream. So let's do that. We'll see you guys next time.